cracking comedy. Just move to NTV.
This week on The Trend, Nadia will be here with sassy music. All these and many more only on The Trend.
Welcome home to Amani Rich, the place of peace. Invest in Amani Rich, the place of peace. Call us today on 0790 300 300 or visit www.optivan.co.ke.
Introducing Jomo Kenyatta International Airport's new parking payment options. Through the automated parking system, you can now pay for parking in 3 stress-free ways. Using M-Pesa through the USSD code *486*12#, or using cash at the CAPS payment points located in the parkings, or using your preloaded CAPS A card. No payment will be done at the exits. Experience stress-free parking with Kenya Airports Authority. Kenya Airports Authority, setting our sights high.
Ayo. Nipata juu ya drinks nina Dunda Smart. Na mbogi yangu yote tuna Dunda Smart. Tunaongezea maji tuki Dunda Smart. Katika na mayeng tuki Dunda Smart. Tunaminya masose mabaga mapizza kanyama wote tuki Dunda Smart.
Dunda Smart. Visit jointhepact.com and pledge to never drink and drive. A message from Kenya Breweries Limited. NTV, turning on your world.
This is Press Pass with Mark Masai.
Good evening, welcome to Press Pass, and we are dedicating the whole show to
As members of the Fourth Estate, I urge you to continue to educate and affirm that this situation is real.
Well, is the media doing a good job in painting the real picture of the situation of the coronavirus here in the country and around the world?
Bado iko mbali na sisi kidogo. Ikifika mpaka uwe watu wawili hapa wendo, siku hiyo tutaanza kukimbia.
And we asked the people on the ground whether they feel well prepared given the information that has gotten to them on the coronavirus situation. So let's meet our guests, and I'll stand here, keep a safe distance, and of course observing the social distancing as far as we can. And right next to me, we have Dr. Moses Masika. This is the second time on the show, and appreciate you being available and joining us. He is a research scientist and has been speaking a lot on this very issue. And next to him is Dr. Miriam Mureithi, and she is the acting chair of the Department of Medical Microbiology at the University of Nairobi. They've taken a break, so she's given us time. Basically, she is a medical microbiologist and will have a lot to lend to this discussion. And next to me is a person who's also debating on whether, and in this time, he needs to shave his beard as well. Bernard Mwenzi, he is a science editor at the Nation Media Group. Is it going? The beard? It's staying. All right, at least I have someone to support me, and actually we will have a discussion on that and whether we should be keeping our beards in terms of safety and this time of the coronavirus outbreak and protecting ourselves and people around us. As you have seen, there are some things that we have to observe as media houses, and we're trying to keep a distance, even in the guests that we have, how many people we have in studio. Jackson, my director, has really tried, and my colleagues here in studio have really tried to keep a safe distance between us. And in our daily interactions, some things will have to change. We have had to change shifts within our working group, and of course, so that we don't have the whole team mixing up. And I believe that this is being copied and replicated in other media houses, and you've seen what the Media Council has said and put up as recommendations. But as we reflect on that, let's listen to what people have said on the ground on whether they feel well and adequately prepared to face the coronavirus, given the information that has been going out to them.
Tunaogopa, na kwa vile jukumu tunayo ni ya ukweli na tunaona na ni yetu, bado tunaona kama hiyo bado ni historia, bado iko mbali na sisi kidogo. Ikifika mpaka iwe watu wawili hapa wendo, siku hiyo tutaanza kukimbia.
Serikali haijapeana mafunzo ya kutosha, kwa sababu hata ukiendea maeneo mtaani kule kuna wenye hawana news kuhusu corona, bado hawajajua usafi ni nini. Sasa serikali itumie machifu wazunguke wakisawasisha umati.
Ufahamu mimi niko nayo about corona ni kwamba it's a respiratory disease, na kitu yenye tunafaa kufanya ni kitu yenye tunajua ni ati kushika mtu akirusha, like amekohoa karibu na wewe, unarusha hizo droplets. So the only thing we are supposed to do ni ukienda mahali to maintain your hygienic cleanliness. Yeah, that's all I know about corona.
I feel the information is there, but I feel it's not well disseminated so that it can reach the common man at the grassroots, at the villages.
Sijaelewa inatoka namna gani. Sasa inasangaza mimi kama mimi mtu mzima. Siwezi kusalamia watu zangu. Siwezi kukaa na watu wangu karibu. Sasa nashangaa hiyo gonjwa imetoka namna gani.
The way we cough or sneeze, we've been advised to cough into a tissue, not into our handkerchiefs, because the handkerchief goes back, to the pocket. Yeah, but if we sneeze into a tissue and dispose it responsibly, then that is a good measure. And also keeping social distance, ensuring that you are 1 meter apart, from the people you're interacting with. And of course, avoiding crowded places.
Sijaelewa vizuri vile iko, lakini mimi naelewa iko, kwa sababu nasikia nchi zingine ziko na ni mingi kuliko Kenya.
Ni kwamba mtu anafaa kusanitize mikono ndio tuweze kuprevent. Unaoga kila mahali ukiingia, ukiguza services zozote lazima unahakikisha umeoga na sabuni ama sanitizer.
So a lot has been said in terms of the personal hygiene that people have to observe. And I'll put it to the panel and be as candid as you would, as you've observed the information going out there. And by the way, by the directive of the government and the Ministry of Health, there are some infomercials that we have been running and will be running free of charge because it's good for the public. And in your view, Daktari, have you seen some things in our line of duty and cringed, perhaps as to how we are going about our work and in our dissemination of information? Are we at a 10 out of 10?
Certainly not 10 out of 10, but a good score, I would say. I'm happy to hear that you're going to be running infomercials for free. I know TV time is expensive, so if you're able to spare some, that will be quite good for the public. There are stories I always see, and I want to confirm if they are true.
Yes.
And one we were just discussing before is the story about the Kwale man who was beaten to death. When I read it, I was like, is this really true? And I think Mwinzi could shed a little more light on it.
And we'll get to that, yes.
I always have some of these stories, and once I read them, I'm like, is this really true? So I still have those questions. But generally, I would say the media this time around has done a very good job.
Okay.
And I think one of the challenges that has been for everybody else, including the mainstream media, is social media. And that's where our main problems are. Not mainstream media, but social media, where we see everyone is getting all manner of information, and even people who are supposed to know better are gullible, and falling for the fear, falling for the misinformation. And I think maybe that is something the mainstream media should try and take on, not necessarily to compete with, but to counter any false information that is spreading in a timely manner.
All right.
I think that's something we haven't wrapped our hands around.
And Wenzi will tell us how he's perhaps facing this particular challenge from the health desk and the science desk holistically from Nation Media Group's perspective. To you, Dr. Mureithi, as you've been following the coverage of it, are there some areas that were perhaps maybe dwelling too much on and neglecting others?
Well, again, it's not 10 out of 10. We are getting there. There's always room for improvement.
Yes.
But it's very impressive that now it's on, first of all, on everybody's lips, coronavirus and what to do, washing of hands. So that's fantastic. But I'd really like now that emphasis, how we, first of all, washing our hands. I know there's hysteria that we've run out of sanitizers. I've seen in a news bulletin that there are fake sanitizers that the government has seized. So at least I'd like us to really emphasize simply soap and water. Whether it's panga soap, sunlight, whatever you can get hold of, but soap and water is very, very crucial, and it can really go far. Because now there's that fear of, oh, they're running out of this. Social media, I don't know. It's not a unique problem for Kenya. It's a worldwide problem. In an era of fake news are happening, things are happening, and we're watching them happen. So it's 24 hours junk that's probably up every day, every time, as even Trump suffers with fake news. But that's where now you come in and really try and counteract with the facts, with and I think with the facts, the panic, the hysteria that could be generated would really go down. So yes, we are getting there. Fantastic that you're running the ads. I saw the Dettol ad, which is really good, using common mwananchi, showing people how to wash their hands.
Right.
Again, that's fantastic. So we are getting there.
Wenzi, not 10 out of 10, clearly, but on the issue of the fake news, just some of the things that we are putting in place to fight it as NMG.
The first is that we are trolling the net to check what fake news people are posting there and then debunking it, saying, no, this did not happen, this is not true. No, you're not immune to this if you're black, for instance, or just because you live in the tropics.
Yes.
But I think there's something that she said that is quite interesting, and that places at the center of everything that is happening. And she says that it's our responsibility to counter, and that's what we've been doing, to counter the misinformation on social media, all the rumor mongering and fear mongering that is happening there. We sit at a position where we can have conversations with specialists, whether doctors or people in the Ministry of Health, or even the World Health Organization, to tell us what is happening around COVID-19 and all that. So for me, I see journalists, for once, sitting up and saying we are running with this story. We are not letting the social media dominate coverage. We are not letting social media run away with untruths. We are sitting here and we are saying this is the true position as far as this is happening. There's a lot of people, for instance, even on social media now, who believe that there is no COVID-19 in the country. And they are propagating that. And the funniest thing is that they have evidence. They have evidence that we do not have coronavirus in the country. So as journalists, it's our responsibility now to say, look, guys, we have the information. We are in touch with the relevant authorities. We are talking to the doctors. We have access to institutions and facilities that you do not have. We have access to Mbagathi and to KNH that other people do not have. And we have evidence that this is happening.
It is
so
here,
it's our responsibility now and our time to run with this story.
Okay, and so something that now the Media Council has stepped in to make a recommendation, and you will tell us if it is something that will actually protect us. And it's your duty as the head of the health desk to make sure that the team here is protected. And one of the things that they're proposing is the live coverage that we've been having, the live updates from the Ministry of Health, even from the President on the situation at hand, should now not be covered live in terms of having the journalists, a battery of journalists at a particular press conference, but to have it done online. And for you, as far as our protection is concerned, there's also that other thing of having a mic to your mouth and asking you a question. Are we endangering ourselves?
Certainly yes, because if you have too many people of any kind in a crowd or gathered together, if one person is infected, then they expose everyone else. So if we can avoid any kind of crowds, any kind of gatherings at any cost, and still be able to do our job, that would be great. So I would say, if you are able to do a press conference online, even if it means you have to send people, maybe very few would be at the site of action, but many more could be online. And we've seen even the World Health Organization doing their press briefings with people across the world asking questions, getting opportunities to ask questions, even from overseas, very far away from where they are. And it would be really a good thing. And we also should, that should not be limited to the media. We also should see that in other institutions. People are holding meetings and other briefings can adopt the many tools available online to do this. And now our internet is much better.
Yes.
We should be able to get work done, a lot of work done, without necessarily meeting face-to-face.
Face-to-face. Yes. And thank you for coming face-to-face with us on this panel discussion. Yes. Dr. Muredi, your view on this?
So if you have to meet face-to-face, because sometimes you really have to,
yes,
can we maintain a distance? I love this distance. We're at least 1 meter apart because of the nature of the droplets. So it's fantastic. And that should be maintained. I saw the president, was it on a few days ago, standing with the CS, but it was very well arranged that they all stood 1 meter apart. So so we really have to maintain that.
And it'll go some way in protecting us.
And it'll go, a long way. I'm seeing in the US, when the president is making the daily announcements, I was reading that reporters, they take their temperature readings before they enter that press room. Again, that's a superpower. Probably that virtual online thing probably will not really work, but at least they're taking those measures.
I mean, look at the shots that we're having here of people on the streets. Practically speaking, should I walk on the streets like a crazy person, telling someone, "Wait, songa kidogo bana, 1 meter, 1 meter"? Practically speaking, for a person who has to be on the ground on a daily basis, like kufanya biashara or any other meetings, what do you advise a Kenyan in this situation?
Well, again, first, if you really have to go to the streets, maybe this is where you get your daily living. First, observe. If you cannot observe those distances,
1 meter distance,
maintain at least the hygiene measures we're advocating for. Regular washing of hands with soap and water. If you can't get access to that, sanitizer with at least 60% soap. Again, there are social, behavioral, economical factors that will go into that. But we can observe that if you have to sneeze or cough, make sure you have respiratory hygiene, where you cough on your elbow and use a tissue instead of a hanky. So try as much as possible. If you really have to go to the streets, observe these measures. I'm seeing in China, in Wuhan, I was reading a story how when they have to go out, they have to wear their masks. They avoid several things like touching lifts. So this probably we're not there yet.
Yes,
we have to go with a mask. And please, we don't want to see people wearing masks in the streets.
I'll get to you on how we're doing it in the office and for our colleagues at Mwinzi. But my goodness, it's almost a crime now to sneeze in the office. I've done it a few times today, or even cough. You have those stairs. But practically, for Mwananchi, you're using the matatu, you're on a PSV. What do I do to protect myself? And this is information we need to give them on a daily.
The first thing for you to deal with any danger is to avoid it. If you can, where are you going? Do you have to go? If you have to go, then you could choose to travel at times when vehicles are least congested, if you're using a public service vehicle, or if it's a place you could walk, you're better off walking. That is also healthy, of course. But if you have to enter a public service vehicle or any other vehicle for that matter, I think now they are providing a facility for cleaning hands of some sort, and the vehicles themselves need to be cleaned frequently or regularly. That helps a bit. But generally, if you are in that closed space for a long time, there's always a risk that if one person is infected, they can infect the rest. And I like the tracking, or should I say the documentation that I think Kisumu has introduced for recording sort of matatu manifests, so that if you have to track people, it is easier. So avoid it if you can, and if not, then shorten the period you have to spend there, so that if you are traveling, you travel at off-peak times or either much earlier or a bit later, so that you avoid too many basically spread out the traffic. That
Okay.
could help. I've noticed the traffic has gone down, but
Yes.
it may just be private cars, not matatus.
The matatus, yeah.
And because there are people who are still out there. Some people have been told to stay home, which helps, but there's people out there. Try and maintain distance whenever you can, and avoid this congregation we often see in our social circles, where people just meet somewhere and start making a story, because every time you're in a crowd, especially sitting close together, that's a risk.
Right. Okay, and Mwinzi, just before we get to the quick fire questions, this is on the next part. I'd like you to conclude, and as we look at this first part, as we look at what the Media Council has said in the statement for my director to just put it up, to tell us practical steps you've put for our colleagues, the journalists.
I'll answer that question in two ways. First, I'll look at the general assumption and the general advice that we are getting that technology can actually solve the press conferences headache. And then I'll look at what we are doing in the newsroom. Today, the AU invited us for a briefing online from Addis Ababa. That briefing was a lot of ministers, finance ministers from the continent were supposed to take part in that briefing. We spent about 30 minutes, 30 minutes just fiddling with microphones and checking whether you're available. Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, I cannot hear you. Togo, Chad, can you hear me? South Africa, can you hear me? And eventually, I had to leave the conference. I did not get anything. I did not have the time or the patience to go through that. So technology is good, but unless and until we have it right, then it is not going to work. Right now, we do not have any infrastructure that tells me, for instance, that Afia House can set up a conference and the CS just goes there and talks that I can receive that
Clean
and
feed.
talk back to him from the office. It's not available. I come from the school of thought that tells me that as a journalist, I have to go where the story is. It's my responsibility. It is what I went to school for.
Yeah.
It is what I live for. It is what I wake up in the morning for. So I have to tell the story and I have to go where it is. Of course, we also say that there is no story worth dying for. So we are taking precautions in that regard. And that is why for this newsroom, we have equipped our reporters, especially the people who are going out to the hospitals, who are talking to the patients and all that. We have bought protective gear, hazmat suits, masks, anything. We are protecting them and ensuring that once they go and they come back, they have, they have taken the safety precautions to ensure that they remain safe. However, that is not enough, because as long as you're exposing people, to risks, there is also the psychological aspect that comes later on. Do I have it? People, the panic attacks that you're talking about, they get worried and all that. So then you also have to ensure that if need be, somebody gets psychological counseling. Go see a psychologist. Just talk about what is happening. What do you feel? If you need to be tested, if you need to be reassured, and all that. So that is important. However, I must insist that as journalists, we cannot sit and wait for a press release to come. I mean, that is not journalism.
Yes.
We must go and look for that story. By the time the press release is coming, it is only helping us tell the story that we've already gathered from the ground. That is key as far as this conversation is concerned.
Okay, and I appreciate my colleagues.
And before
Yes.
I think there are other conversations that we must have. Should we have safe places for our journalists? When they go to the field, should we allow them to go back to their families if they feel they are not okay? So
They
those
feel
are
that they've
conversations.
exposed themselves.
Yeah, they feel they've exposed themselves. Should we let them go? If not, what can media organizations do? So the statement by the Media Council of Kenya, which I told them, and I told them I do not agree with this. I do not agree with the suggestion that we should not hold press conferences until we have the right infrastructure to ensure a smooth and timely flow of information.
Yes, because with the vacuum and in this time, then the fake news takes over, and we don't want that to happen. And when we take a break now, and we'll be back with these are all questions that we've gotten from people thanks to our digital desk. They had some questions thrown at us in terms of the myths that they would like to be debunked by the people we have here on the panel. We'll also show you the process of getting tested. for coronavirus. We have one of our colleagues who did it last week and will show you practically and respond from the panel's perspective. Stay with Press Pass.
When you're facing stubborn stains, you're always in a fierce fight. Clean Salt kicks out stains. Kimateki.
This week on The Trend, Nadia will be here with sassy music. All these and many more only on The Trend.
Welcome home to Amani Rich, the place of peace. Invest in Amani Rich, the place of peace. Call us today on 0790 300 300 or visit www.optivan.co.ke.
Automated parking system, you can now pay for parking in 3 stress-free ways. Using M-Pesa through the USSD code *486*12#, or using cash at the CAPS payment points located in the parkings, or using your preloaded CAPS A card. No payment will be done at the exits.
Corona, Corona, osha mikono, epuka mikusanyiko so ya lazima.
This Saturday on Teen Republic Live, Mama Wambo, Size 8 and Masterpiece King will get you high on their music.
You
just didn't get to yours yet.
Tune in for the hottest entertainment and word on the street.
The policeman, umekosea, hazijanishika.
It's a party with the Bashment crew. Let's have a bash.
Nipate church.
Teen Republic in association with Fanta.
Hanging out, it's my summer now.
The blind man told police officers, afade mimi sijawahi ona bangi maisha yangu yote.
Hizo ma award zikafanya watu waanze kuimbia award badala waimbe the word.
Mimi mkinichagua mtaona miujiza.
Anajifanya siku hizi.
Kibia mara moja.
Naogopa Mwenyezi Mungu na uji moto peke yake.
Hiyo si bangi.
East Africa is transforming. And so are we. We're now more diverse, more visual, more engaging. Grab a copy of the new East African. To subscribe, email subscription@ke.nationmedia.com or epaper@ke.nationmedia.com.
So we feel forever be real, together stay free wherever.
Welcome back. There has been a lot of talk about screening and testing and whether they're the same thing and if there's some inaccuracies in terms of this being reported. And in fact, today in the latest presser, the health minister, that is Mutahi Kagwe, he said that so far there's still seven positive coronavirus cases, including 6 Kenyans and 1 Burundian. 8 suspected cases tested in the last 24 hours are all negative, he said, and the persons being processed to be discharged, and 145 people who have been contacted as follow-up because they came into contact with the first case, and over 600,000 people who have entered the country have been screened. 173 people have been tested. Many people are like, 600,000 screened? Do we have that, infrastructure to do the same? So Anita Nkonge went to one of the private hospitals last week to get tested and to give a simulation of what you would expect. Let's look at that.
Testing for COVID-19 is imperative in confirming symptoms and getting a timely diagnosis and treatment. So what exactly does the testing look like? Come with me.
For purposes of this simulation, I was a walk-in patient. Ideally, you're encouraged to call using the hotline. If the doctor believes you need to be tested, an ambulance would come pick you up and bring you to hospital. Once at the hospital, I was given a mask to put on before I explained my symptoms.
What we don't want to do is test asymptomatic people with no symptoms. Most people who don't have symptoms, even if they're incubating the virus, will test negative. So what that would do is give a false sense of assurance that somebody now is negative, and then they can still go on and transmit. So generally, the test should be done when symptoms develop.
I feel like I have the symptoms. I have a fever.
Have they been to a place or in contact with somebody within the last 14 days that they might have been exposed to COVID-19? Then the main 2 symptoms are fever and cough. The cough tends to be a deep cough from the chest, not an upper airway cough. And it's a bit hard to demonstrate the difference, but if you have one versus the other, you will know. They don't tend to have runny nose. That's very uncommon.
Once established that I met all the symptom requirements, I was then escorted into the isolation room. The room had negative air pressure, which means that the suction force in the room could not transmit any of my airborne particles.
Then the person collecting the test will put on appropriate protective equipment, and that will normally include a mask, goggles or an eye shield, the gown and gloves.
The doctor then met me inquiring about my travel history and symptoms once more, and this is where it got interesting.
Then they will put the swab into the nasopharynx, which is way back in the nose. And the Ministry of Health is also collecting oropharyngeal swabs, so that's from the back of the throat. The most important one, though, is the nasopharyngeal, because that is where the highest number of virus particles will be.
Just gently, okay. My sample will now be taken to the lab where it will take 1 or 2 days to get tested. Until then, I am advised to be in self-quarantine, which usually means isolating myself from most people and waiting until the lab results come out. Anita Nkonge, NTV.
So I'll throw it to the panel. Is this an apt simulation of what someone would expect if they walked in? Just start with you, Moses, as we go to Dr. Mureithi.
I mean, this looks like the ideal situation, except for the part that she walked into a hospital instead of calling. I guess it was necessary for this part of the story. But there could be a lot of variations to this, that first you may call and then the officials will tell you to wait at home, will come to you.
Yes.
But I like the fact that the healthcare worker here took the measures necessary to protect herself and her colleagues, and the doctor who came to collect the sample also took the measures that are required, which is what would protect the healthcare worker and also prevent passing over this virus to others, which is good. Okay. And the fact that they also took the sample from the nose instead of the mouth, that is where you need to get this sample from. So I think in many ways this was ideal. But as I said, in real life situation, there could be lots of variations.
Right.
That even before you notice, if somebody just walked in and they didn't say what they had, by the time you notice that they have this condition, they may have exposed other people in the waiting area. So that's why many hospitals have now put triad so that they can try and identify such persons.
Okay.
But the most important thing I would say is that if you're going to a facility and you suspect that you have symptoms or you've been exposed to COVID-19, call first and warn the healthcare worker, or when you get there, find a way to warn them before you can mingle with other patients and other healthcare workers.
Okay.
That is very important.
And just to differentiate the process, because earlier we were told by CS Mutai Kagwe that there's screening, 600,000 cases of people who've entered the country, and then there's testing, 173 at least. The differentiation in that, because it seems we've confused the audience in the terminologies there.
Yes, so those are two different terminologies. So let's start from there, because I also saw even the CS was trying to really explain the differences. So the screening, the 600,000, first of all, that's impressive. And this is where they try and take your history. They will not take any of your samples. They'll not...
Even the heat, like your temperature?
They start with the heat, but even before that, your history. Have you traveled? Do you think you've come into contact with anybody who's infected? And then they would probably ask you about symptoms, as they take your temperature as well. So that's the screening process, where they just try and meet the case definition that has trickled down from WHO to Ministry of Health, as they tick those symptoms as what we saw in the screen. Yes, the dry cough and headaches, the fever. If you tick all those boxes, then you're taken now for the testing. And that's why you've seen the numbers from 600,000 to 173 testing. So those 173, either they had a travel history, they've probably come into contact with someone who displayed the symptoms, and maybe they're also exhibiting some of the symptoms, where they have to go through that testing that we have seen, where the samples are taken and within a day or two they get the results back.
And just to clarify, because there's some institutions, when the private ones at least, the people are told there is the expectation there will be a charge. But with the centers that have been designated for screening and testing, to be specific, people shouldn't expect to be charged for that.
It's free of charge, and that has been emphasized over and over again by the Ministry of Health. Unless now, I don't know about Aga Khan, but the testing that is being offered at the moment should be free of charge, and it is free of charge.
There is a concern then, Mwinzi, if we put on these stories and encourage people to go to test, it'll be like a run on the bank, and there'll be a run to the hospitals, and then the concern of, are there enough kits? And people are generally, and rightfully so, encouraged or discouraged to just go for testing, just to get a clean bill of health. How do we control this?
It's the tone of our reporting and what we are putting out there. So long as we are not telling people to rush to hospitals and get tested, we are telling them, if you have these symptoms, then probably you need to talk to your doctor about this. You need to go check. Probably the first point of call is not even at the testing facilities, it's to your doctor. And then the doctor tells you, yeah, I think for this one, we might need to refer you to this other place. The most important is that we tell people and we differentiate, just the usual symptoms that we have. And they have seen some boxes. We've been publishing some documents. If you have these and these and these, you probably just have a normal flu. But if you have these and these and these, maybe you might need to go and get tested.
There has been the concern of whether there are enough kits for testing. So do you think, on the reverse, it probably prepares someone to think, what's the use to go if they're not enough? And right now we have 2 designated centers for this particular issue. Thinking about someone uko mashinani, how do we communicate?
I think it's not for us to start talking about whether there are enough testing kits. As journalists, it's not for us to start.
It was put to the CS today.
Yes. The CS is the one who's supposed to tell us whether we have. But we as journalists cannot now start prosecuting that matter. Do we have enough testing kits or not? Unless we want to be judgmental about this. But the only thing that we can do is put that question to a person in authority. Do we have enough testing kits? If that person tells us yes, we do. Unless we want to do an investigative piece and go to to these hospitals and all these centers and say, they are telling us they have enough. Kumbe, we only have 1,000 testing kits. Do not come here.
But will it serve any purpose to bring that out and to realistically say there's not enough kits to test everyone in this country?
What we are doing now as journalists is to assure the public that everything is in control. Already people are panicking. They are saying if this thing comes here, and it is here, then we are doomed. We are dead. You don't now also want to create this other panic that we do not have enough testing kits if you do not have the information. If you have the right information and you have the facts, you have the evidence that, yes, we do not have enough testing kits, then yes, you can tell that story.
Yes.
But our responsibility right now is to calm down the temperatures, calm down the people are panicking all over, tell them this is what you need to do if you suspect you have this, and then tell them, go. If they go there and they are not tested, then you will report that. We will say they went there, the government told them to go there, we send them there, but there were no testing kits.
Yes.
And then now becomes a big story.
But in realistic terms, what is enough testing kits? Because people think it is one for every Kenyan.
I was actually thinking about that also. Do we have enough kits to test 50 million Kenyans? Definitely no. We don't have the capacity. Do we have the capacity to test the number that requires to be tested? I think we do. And they've already demonstrated that by having screened more than 500,000 people and tested those that require to be tested, that the capacity is there. We can expand that capacity, and I hope we do in the coming days. But the most important bit about not testing everybody is the time we will take to discover people who are actually infected. If today we say every Kenyan can go for a test, tomorrow we'll have millions of people going for the testing. And what that does is that it delays our ability to detect those who are actually sick. And because every day you delay, they infect or they risk infecting other people, that doesn't serve us at all. So why we need to screen first, which is quick, so that we can get to those people who actually need to be tested, that allows us to detect this infection much earlier, rather than just testing everybody for the sake of testing, because by the time we get to the one person that is infected, we've taken a long time. And yes, we cannot test every Kenyan, it's not necessary, but we should be able to test those that require that testing.
And let's listen to, before I give you a chance to respond to what CS Mutaikagwe said earlier today, that there will be random testing starting, screening starting this particular Saturday. And let's listen into that, and then Dr. Mureithi, you'll respond.
As members of the Fourth Estate, I urge you to continue to educate and affirm that this situation is real. It cannot be unreal in Kenya when it is real in China, it is real in the United States, in Spain, in Italy, and we think that in Kenya it is something to joke around with. It is not. It is not. And sometimes one is baffled by some of the reaction that we are getting. Please, let's take this matter seriously. Secondly, we will embark on random screening in targeted areas for members of the public, commencing this Saturday, March 21st, 2020.
This is unprecedented. A lot of what we're facing is unprecedented. But I'd like to get from a medical perspective, perhaps, what they're trying to get at. Because for Mwananchi, they're thinking, hey, niko mahali na date, alafu kidogo kidogo. You stand there, let's get your temperature and all that. What are they getting at with this? And just to inform the Mwananchi.
Okay, first of all, I really like how serious, from his point of view, this is, and that should be felt by everybody. This is a serious matter. It's not business as usual. And for him to say state about random testing, really what they're trying to figure out or investigate, is there local transmission of this virus? Is there anyone, a member of the community, who's probably not a contact of any of these cases that have so far been reported? Is there any one of them who could be meeting this case definition, who could be carrying the virus, and who needs very early intervention before it cascades over and over again to the community. So here they're really trying to catch local or community transmission that has no relation to the people that have either met, who have tested positive or not.
But
so this is very crucial in terms of controlling the disease.
And it's perhaps in the mapping out, because you're saying they've followed 145 cases at least, and there's a point about mapping out that you'll bring out Bwanamwinzi. But if they do find that you are, you have it, or they have a reason to believe that there's follow-up that needs to happen, then will they take you in, not take you in, it's not prison, but will they take you to a medical center? What will happen? What should a Kenyan expect?
And I'm hoping that if we get to that point where someone tests positive in this random testing, they'll have been caught early before they've already started interacting with many other more people, taken out of this community or this setting and put under quarantine, where either now they'll follow up with the symptoms, if they need any treatment, any supportive treatment, because also from what we are seeing, if this is caught early enough before it becomes severe, this person either experiences mild type of infection, which can either resolve by itself with probably very little intervention without needing an ICU. So this is very good. So the public should not be alarmed by it. It's very important. And if any of these cases are caught, again, we should not now go into panic mode. This is really crucial so that we can take this person who's tested positive, and hopefully there'll be none, quarantine them, and take care of that infection before we get to a place where we overwhelm our system, our healthcare system, and also we don't want also this transmission, the routes of transmission, to continue over and over again in the community. So this is good.
Yes, Mwenzi, when he started that particular statement that we've just played, he said he calls upon the media to draw the true picture and show Kenyans that it's real. And we've encountered people who still, look at it and feel, hey, is this thing really here? So have we failed in our jobs not having people feel or believe that it's here? And how do we balance that versus being alarmist?
I think that for me is the biggest test. How we can balance the need to inform people, to tell them that this thing is here and it's dangerous, and the need not to create panic among the communities. Once, and especially, I think that's where we are heading. If you notice, all the declared cases, all the confirmed cases have a history of travel. Yeah? So that means, as yet, we have not confirmed community transmission. But once we get to that phase, then we are entering a different place altogether, because it's a very dangerous. We are creating clusters of infected communities that will be very, very hard to monitor and very, very hard to control. So it's important. It's important that we tell people, we show them that this is where we are now. As far as we are concerned, the confirmed cases are only those who have a history of travel. But as people who are interested in getting to know what is happening, and as media organizations, it is our responsibility now to show people and to inform them that while we might not have one confirmed local transmission case, it might be there.
Yes,
yeah?
Because of the interaction.
Yes. Of course, we are not going to say it's there, but we are creating that scenario that it might be there. And that's the reason we are taking all these precautions.
Yes.
Why, for instance, are we installing hand washers and sanitizers all over town? Yeah, it's because we are trying to control, to minimize any risk of community transmission.
Yes. Somewhat contain it.
And contain it.
Yes.
What I feel, however, is that we in the media are caught in a very bad place. Because you're seeing a lot of things happening that you say, I actually want to write about this. I should write about this. I should pontificate about this. But unfortunately, you can't. Because if you do, then you'll be creating panic. And there have been concerns, especially among journalists and the media community generally, that the media seems to be a bit muzzled in the way it is reporting this.
But there's that thing we say on a daily basis, come and buy. And this is not just out of getting, clicks or selling the paper, but it is in our interest to protect the nation. And this was reported about Wuhan itself, the doctor who actually, the whistleblower, he, was punished at first in terms of, bringing it out, and he passed on. aren't we then doing an injustice if we feel there's something we need to report?
No, we are not. I don't think we are, because we are not just reporting any other story. You're not
Yes.
reporting the story about a political rally somewhere.
True.
This is a matter of life and death. It's a science story. It's a health story. There are ethical guidelines on how you can report it. I've seen people, for instance, saying, how come we do not have evidence of the names of the people who have been confirmed infected? Basically, people are telling us you need to publish the names of people who are infected. From a medical perspective, that is wrong. From a journalistic perspective, that is also wrong. You cannot declare, you cannot go out and tell people, oh, by the way, Mark has this thing. You cannot. All right? Yet people are demanding that evidence. And there are clusters of people who are saying, so long as we do not have that evidence, so that we do not have names, then this thing is not here. Those are people that will require, and that's the reason we are creating all these, scenarios and ensuring that we carry out the messaging, going out on TV, on radio, in our newspapers, on social media, and creating synergies with experts in the field and with the Ministry of Health,
yes,
to tell people that this thing is actually here. We are drawing examples from Wuhan. We are showing people the photos and videos of what is happening in Italy. We are not doing that to create a sense of panic, but to show people that this thing is here. Italy was where we are now about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Just 2 cases. We are going to beat this. Yeah, they did not take the precautions that we are taking now. We have the advantage of time. We've seen how China has experienced this, the outcomes from their own negligence. We've seen how Europe and the Americas are struggling with this. But for us in Africa, we have the advantage of time. So we might say, even though we have not experienced it, we've learned from the experiences of other people how to deal with this. But the media must keep sending that message, showing people what is happening, getting all these videos from the wire services and telling people and showing them that this is actually happening in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
If we are not careful, it will start happening.
Yes, and it has horrific potential.
Yeah.
And just quickly before we take another break and then we get to the quick fire, I promise you they'll be coming. Just why, from a medical perspective, we do not disclose the identity of the patient zero or anyone who's under treatment.
And that's a very commendable thing that the media has not clamored for the identities of these persons, because I was actually quite concerned that people might want to go out and find out who these people are. If they choose to come out on their own, by all means support that.
Yes.
But if you go after these people and just reveal their identity, and sometimes it's done and it's the wrong person being revealed, so to speak, then you put them at risk, either stigma, both in the workplace, their families, and so many other things. And that privacy can actually lead to cyberbullying. Breach on privacy can lead to cyberbullying, can lead to many other issues. And really, for us in the medical field, we discuss these things in an anonymized way so that we don't know, we do not disclose the people's names unless it's absolutely necessary to do so.
Yes.
And I'm glad that has caught on in the media, because it breaks the humanity of a person, the dignity of a person, and can also affect how they work, their mental health.
Is there a danger, though, in zeroing in on the area, for instance, Rongai, in the first case, patient zero, and now people really just trying to find out, because there are people who live around, and then there's those WhatsApp groups of neighborhoods. Is there danger for us zeroing in and going to Rongai if indeed that's where the first case or the first person was, gotten from or used to live?
No. Again, I totally agree with the panelists that we really need to protect the identity of these persons, because again, the stigma, mental health, the bullying, are not just for them. Their families, it will just be a cascade of just awful events. So really, we need to protect them. I know if we wanted to, we would know where they are. I mean, originally they zeroed in on Ongata Rongai, but I really want, again, commend you for not revealing even the house number. Or if you wanted to, I know you would.
Yes.
But that issue of protection is very crucial and very, very, very important.
How do we control it in that case of Saturday, the screening, and perhaps someone is now taken into an ambulance, taken to a center, and then people start sharing the videos? How do we play, against that, not play into the clamor to show? And people know this is actually someone who was screened and found to have an issue. How do we intend to then face that?
I think the strength of legacy media is that it does not operate in an ethical vacuum. We have ethical guidelines that tell us you cannot publish this image, you cannot publish this video clip, you can't say this about a person. Mm-hmm. We are guided. We have our own editorial guidelines on what we can publish and what we can't. However, the problem is the masses out there do not operate within the same windows of governance that we do. And that's where the problem is. I have seen people posting really, really damaging information about other people on social media. I've seen bloggers writing full-length articles purporting to have evidence against the wrongdoings, evidence on the wrongdoings of other people. That happens all the time. It is not for we in the media to start now saying, you cannot do that. I think it's up to the regulatory agencies to come in and clamp down on the spread of misinformation.
And the CS said that they would, and we'll hear that when we get back. Real quick, Bernie.
I just want to add to, you have a role in case this comes and there's an image or the people around them see this person being taken and they turn positive. Our role here is to really destigmatize this infection. Really educate and really try and debunk this virus so that we don't associate it with the evilness that I think is really circulating.
There's an end of the world kind of connotation.
You've been telling people, we've published so many statistics about the fatality rate, the mortality rate.
I'd like to see now we've published the recovery. The guys who've recovered, it's a big number.
I think there is a local TV station hosted a patient who had recovered, not locally, who had recovered, but we've categorically and all the time we've been saying that this is not, if you get it, it's not a death sentence. It's not a death sentence. Okay. A lot of people, I was reading some, I can't remember the source of the research paper, that indicated that about 87% of people who will get this will not know they have it. They don't know they have it. Some guys will go, mild, you just have a mild flu or fever, you feel lethargic, and then after a week or maybe some guys think it's a hangover or something. Yes. Then after a week or two, you're fine. Right. So you had it, but you didn't know you had it. We've written about that. We've shown people on TV that this is not a death sentence. Okay. And we, if you look at the tone of reporting of the traditional legacy media and compare it to the tone of reporting of the bloggers out there, it's different. If you look at the tweets, the tone of the tweets on Facebook, what people are saying there, and you look at what we in mainstream media are saying, it's totally different. All right. And the problem is the fear mongering is being spread on the social media platforms.
Okay, and one of the questions that we'll get to, and thank you for on that note of we need to show people that it's not the end of the world for them. It is a concern for some. We have the questions here. Any and every on corona. Aaron Mungai, you ask, don't answer yet. Can the virus be transmitted through conjugal rights? We'll get the answer to this and many more after the break. Stay with us.
Sensitivity is a short, sharp pain that people experience when they have something hot or cold getting to the nerve of the tooth. Dentists recommend Sensodyne to their patients. It's able to get inside the tooth and calm the nerve of the tooth down. And the proof's in the results. It works.
Looking to enjoy sumptuous meals and drinks at affordable rates? Welcome to Nasco's. Our diverse menu gives you a variety to choose from. Visit us at Veteran House 4th floor, Moi Avenue, or along Mombasa Road at the Nation Printing Press Center. We offer outside catering service and do home and office deliveries. For inquiries or to place an order, call 0700-613-902 or email info@nascos.co.ke. Nation Staff Consumer Society Limited. Enjoy our hospitality.
Corona, corona, osha mikono, epuka mikusanyiko so ya lazima.
This Saturday on Teen Republic Live, Mama Wambo, Size 8 and Masterpiece King will get you high on their music.
You
just didn't get to yours yet.
Tune in for the hottest entertainment and word on the street.
The policeman, umekosea, hazijanishika.
It's a party with the Bashment crew. Let's have a bash.
Nipate judge.
Teen Republic in association with Fanta.
Hanging out, it's my summer now.
You are holy.
I want to appeal to members of the public to desist, and I have said this almost in every meeting that we have had, almost in every press conference. We have appealed to people to desist from any form of misinformation. I think you are all alive to that the social media has been abuzz with all sorts of rumors, including that we are locking down Nairobi, that we are sending people home, that we are doing this and we are doing the other. Things that have come from nowhere, that we are deploying the military. You know, these rumors must stop. They must stop.
And here's a quick example of one of the things that showed up over the week. And this was actually posted by Yusuf Ibrahim. He's a colleague in the industry. And this was a story proclaiming, or at least having the view that Kenya has confirmed 24 new corona cases in Isiolo, if you can see this. Yes, this we, of course, flagged it as fake news and some of the issues that we need to continue doing as mainstream media, because we can expect a lot more of this fake news getting out there. Well, this is another story that we should turn our attention to in the line of fake news, and it was reported as being the position. There's this angle: man killed in Kwale after showing coronavirus symptoms, even on the Daily Nation. And yes, Kwale youths attack, kill man over coronavirus. BBC also reported on this, but they kind of corrected a position here when they said that the police chief who had initially confirmed this case said that it was actually from a drunken brawl and it wasn't a case of suspected coronavirus and someone being attacked. Mwenzi, from your perspective, was this accurate? Really quick.
No, it wasn't. I think it is one of those unfortunate things. We are relying on information from the police,
yes,
who are our primary sources, and they tell us that this person was killed over coronavirus, and we are quick to tweet it without verifying it.
Right.
We should have verified.
Yes. Dangers you see, Dr. Muredi? And
yes, it has. The fake news just fuels panic, fear in the community, in the society, and that's what we don't want right now. Because if you have fear, you have panic, you're not thinking straight, you're not taking instructions that have been given. So really, we need, again, forget fake news. Listen to the real news that I trust the mainstream media, the Ministry of Health and CS and everybody else is giving, and that way people can think straight, digest what they've been told, and then implement what they've been told.
you had your doubts, Dr. Masika, about this particular story.
The moment I read it, I was worried, and I didn't really get convinced until the minister talked about it. So I would say confirm, verify, triangulate, regardless of the source. If it's too juicy, if it's too, if it rings alarm bells, there are stories that just ring alarm bells. Please verify.
Yes. But
Verify.
I want to point out to you how dangerous and how tricky this story really was for us. Number one, the local police officer, the local police chief, confirms and tells us that this person was killed over coronavirus. See, even the minister, even the health CS repeats the same thing. So that lie, that falsehood has gained currency, and it's now all over town. Even the CS is talking about this.
Yes.
Until, and that's where we as journalists now come in. The police officer is telling us that this person was killed over coronavirus. Is it true? Can we go and talk to the villagers? Yeah. Can we go to the homestead? What was the issue? Can we go to the scene of the crime? What happened?
And there's a danger of copycat syndrome and incidences where if they hear in Kwale they beat someone who was suspected, then we can probably thrash someone on this. But then there's a danger, and then you expose yourself.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course, if you're beating up somebody with coronavirus, it's probably screaming at you, and that droplets come to your face, and you could get infected. But it also shows how our biases could affect our work. Because this policeman was probably convinced that this person was killed because of coronavirus. The same thing, it could affect a journalist's work, a medical doctor's work. Your fears play into your belief, play into what you're seeing, and you can actually totally be convinced that this is the reason, yet it is not. It's just because of your fears that you perceive it to be so.
All right, let's get to some of the things that we can debunk. And some people, and it has been reported, that people are feeling it's safer to travel up country instead of staying here in the city. And of course, ahead of this suspected lockdown that they felt. Do you think this is a safe thing from your perspective?
Well, two things. You cannot curtail people's rights to movement. Okay, so
unless there's a lockdown.
Yes, unless now we reach there, but we're not there. And remember, the CS was very, very adamant we're not there yet. So we cannot curtail that. And I like what I'm seeing now. They're taking a manifest. They've been demanded that they have to have a manifest of who goes where. But now the dangers of going up country to your grandparents, and these are probably younger people, and God forbid, probably they're infected and they don't know, and then take it now further on to these mashinani areas, to the older, more vulnerable population. That's where the danger is. Their hospitals probably are not even have the capacity in that mashinani scenario to handle such cases. So really, stay put if you have to. Remember, it's not business as usual. It's not time to go on holidays. It's not time to take your kids to their grandparents. It's really stay at home, your home, and await further instructions. And again, observe all those necessary measures just to keep the infection away from our country.
All right, let's try to answer some of the questions that have been placed on Facebook and on Twitter. On Facebook, Aaron Mungai, you say, can the virus be transmitted through, you ask, can the virus be transmitted through conjugal rights? Masika?
It's interesting that you choose to start with the question number 3 instead of question number 1. But
in no particular order. I promised it before we took a break, so let's start with that.
Everybody is waiting for that.
Yeah. So there is no evidence right now that sexual intercourse can transmit this virus. I believe that was conjugal rights mean.
Yes.
There is no evidence. But because of close proximity, unless you are enjoying your conjugal rights from 2 meters away, it is likely that from the interactions you could get infected with this person. So I would say, if you have a partner and they have been exposed to the virus and you suspect that they're infected, they should be self-quarantined in the house, or if they're showing symptoms, then it should be at a facility designated by the government. But if you just think they've been exposed, it makes sense. For example, somebody has traveled back. I know there's a lot of feeling that you probably need to mingle much more closely with them.
Yes.
But because they've been exposed, you need to self-quarantine. That means you will not be able to enjoy some of these rights because of that reason. But if you do enjoy, whatever exposes you, whatever gets you infected is not the sexual intercourse, but the close proximity.
And Dr. Muredi, you've been studying, or you have been studying infectious diseases for over a decade. I'm just looking to get the facts right here on what you sent me. And people are asking, before we get even to the possible cure, people are asking, for instance, this one by Junior Aden, how long will the virus survive outside the body of a person? I'll pair it with one's moose, I think that's the name. You can see it there. Why is a virus mutating so fast? Or has it been genetically engineered?
So for Junior Aden, how long will the virus survive outside the body of a person? They've actually published real evidence where they tested the duration of survival of this virus. And really, just to summarize that study, it's between 2 hours and up to 2 days, depending on the surface.
Okay.
Yes.
And why is the virus mutating? At least he
yes.
feels
so
this is mutating.
I don't know where they're getting this notion from. Yes, this type of viruses mutate. And we are yet to see a study that has actually interrogated this, to see the rates of mutation, what type of mutations are happening, and how lethal these mutations are. Viruses are known to do that, but we're yet to see a concrete study that will justify this. Is it genetically engineered? From our studies, it's very similar to other coronaviruses, particularly very similar to SARS that was reported in the year 2000 or so. So really, it's very, very hard for someone to sit down and genetically engineer such type of viruses. So no.
And you deal with a lot of these conspiracy theories that we need to debunk as well in our line of duty. And in that, perhaps one of the questions we've needed to answer is if it's airborne. This coronavirus is airborne.
Yes, that's one of the questions, and you know, for us to answer that question, then we have to talk to the doctors, and we have to pour over tons and tons of research to see whether there is any evidence. One of the things that people have been talking about, they have been looking at the mass fumigation of streets in Wuhan and all these other places, and they're saying, how come these guys are doing this? It means this thing is airborne. It means if I walk on the streets of Nairobi and somebody has it, then I'll get it. But we've been categorical that you have to be in close proximity of a person who has it for you to get it.
Yes, and so is it airborne, yes or no question? It is not. No. Okay, and something else that we need to answer and draw the real picture is COVID-19 real in Kenya? This is Shiko D. I'm just jumping to some of the questions here to kind of relate to them.
Yes, COVID-19 is real in Kenya. I cannot believe that, there's
a question being asked today.
Yes, COVID-19 is real in Kenya. We have it, and we have patients who have it in hospital right now.
Okay, and this is something that was reported earlier today by ABC News, and even posted a video of Trump at least hinting at chloroquine. If I remember right, this was a really nasty medicine that we had back in the day to treat malaria, and that it may help treat coronavirus. And Kevin Moses asked, is it true that chloroquine, the old anti-malaria drug, has been found to treat coronavirus, with 40 positive cases in France recovering 100%?
I'll start by saying that you cannot confidently say that chloroquine is a treatment for coronavirus. This is the reason. For you to come up and say this is a drug that definitively treats this disease, you need to compare patients who are on the drug and those who are not, and look at several things. First, do you reduce the number of deaths? Two, do you reduce the duration of that they are sick? Do you reduce the severity of symptoms? If you're able to show that scientifically, then we can begin to consider that drug as the definitive treatment for the virus. Now, so far, testing 40 patients is barely enough for that. You need thousands of patients. Luckily, WHO has picked this up, and they are now enrolling different countries so they can put patients on different treatments and compare this scientifically so that we can generate the evidence that we need. So yes, some patients have been put on this treatment and they have recovered, but about 95% in most places of patients with COVID-19 will recover, regardless of what you do to them. I mean, whatever interventions you do. So long as you support them, their breathing, the fever is treated, and the pain, many of them will recover. So whether these people were given chloroquine or something else, most likely chances are that they are going to recover. So you cannot use that as evidence to say this medication works. Because anyway, as we said, 80% of the people who are sick don't even need treatment.
That answers a question also by Gutsy Rachel on the same line about chloroquine. But you brought up something that I'll bring it up as my question, and that is on the issue of treatment then. When they're treating it, because there's that notion that they are actually just eradicating whatever is causing this coronavirus, and we don't quite understand what is happening to a patient who is in hospital for treatment.
Now, there are people who are in hospital, like now in Kenya, for isolation purposes. Because you don't want them to, you are taking them out of circulation. You don't want them to mingle with other people. But there are also about 20% or 20 in 100 patients require to be supported. These are the people who require oxygen therapy. They require treatment for fever, treatment for pain, some fluid, to be given fluids because they're not able to take orally. And this is basically supportive care. You're supporting them so the body can be strong enough to keep fighting the virus, and then they can live through it. A few, maybe 4 out of 100, often require ICU care because then they are getting what we would call respiratory failure, breathing problems so severe that they cannot breathe on themselves, and they require mechanical machines to breathe for them. So this is the supportive care that we do give. But you can also use experimental treatments like chloroquine and others that have been mentioned. There are over 10 drugs I've seen that have been tried in different countries. The experimental drugs are being used to try and increase the chances because there's this, what we would call some anecdotal evidence that they could work, but you cannot then say because this patient has recovered, this particular drug works. You need much more scientific probity than that. So you can use these drugs, and the reason we're able to use them is because we know they are safe. They've been tested already. They've been licensed for use in human beings, so you can use it. And we call it compassionate use. You're basically doing experimental treatment because you don't have any other treatment to give. But the mainstay, the proper care for these patients is supportive. If somebody has a fever, treat the fever. If they're in pain, treat the pain. If they're having difficulties in breathing, take care of that.
Sounds a lot like how we treat a common cold. You treat the symptoms or the other side effects, and so then someone says, kumbe ni homa tu. But as you answer a question by Vinny Cheru, Dr. Mureithi, there's the issue here of recovery from this coronavirus after treatment, and then it coming back, because there have been some stories that it comes back. Is this true?
Yes, so I've seen stories or reports of people who've recovered, and a week or two later, they again test positive. So the question is, did they really recover? So that leaves, I leave the question out there, and that's also been investigated.
And is there a possibility I test for it and I turn out negative, yet I have it? Is that because there are people who say that that's a possibility?
Yes, there's also that. I think that's what we call false negatives. And
I've seen there's some doctors. I've seen some research that suggests that you can test, you turn negative, yet you have it. You go back 2 or 3 days later.
Then you and that really depends on the viral load at that point when you're being tested. But again, there's that still under investigations. The notion that you can get reinfected again. We hope not. We hope we can prove that the body gains some type of immunity that is protective enough to make you not get the infection again. Again, that's up for debate and it's being investigated.
And the CS said earlier today, giving some hope that they're looking to see if any of the 7 may have turned negative, the ones who are under treatment. And in fact, 8 cases are turning negative and were processed to go home. So for those who would be released, you turn out negative, you go home, but then you still are under quarantine?
You're still under, at least now, self-isolation, where you are. Yes, at least observing that distance in your own room, if you can afford to have your own room, your own cutlery, probably your own toilet. If you have to share, make sure that really you don't have to share, but if you have to, observe those hygienic practices. Again, you probably be asked to stay another 7 to 14 days to just make sure that really you have fully recovered. They're doing that in Wuhan. People who are discharged from hospital, they're not released back to the community per se. They're released slowly to an isolation area where again they're monitored daily just to make sure that they're fully recovered.
And Vinny Cheru asks, what is the origin of the disease? I have read several articles about the same, and it's man-made, it's agent that disappeared, and it's now out of control. Could that be true?
I think we answered that when we talked about genetic engineering. That's not true.
The origin, the issue of the origin?
Well, that's again under investigation, but comparing it to SARS and MERS, we believe this new COVID-19 virus probably circulated within the animal kingdom, probably most likely with the bats that probably needed an intermediary host. They are suggesting the pangolins, something that again, it was on sale in the Wuhan market, it's consumed, it's a delicacy that somehow again jumped species from animal to human and then probably circulated within the human species for a while before now we started seeing the infection. So it's not man-made. We think the origins could be the bats, which then needed another intermediary host that we humans interact with, eat or consume, then gain that human-to-human transmission, and this is where we are right now.
I only hear of about people not touching their eyes, nose and mouth. What about the ears? Chacha asks.
As you can tell, for most people, the ear is mostly skin, and this virus cannot penetrate skin. So the nose has, if you put your finger in your nose, you can really touch raw surface that can be good ground for the virus. It's possible to probably put it in the ear, and there's a tube that connects the ear and the nose, but generally most of the transmission will occur through the eyes, the nose and the mouth because of the raw surface that the virus can easily attach to and enter the body. But generally, you try not to touch any part of your face and keep your hands clean just in case you do, because we've noticed it's very hard not to touch your face. And so when you keep your hands clean, if you end up touching your face, then it's not such a big problem.
Okay, and I'll throw this to you, Mwenzi, and not because from Cumberland, but James G. Mars, he asked, can't Masai men provide their local herbs? I'm in Uganda. First of all, I know people will ask, when Masai Sujibu?
Why don't you answer that one?
I don't believe there's an answer to that, but I'm sure you've had from local Monanchi finding out that if there is traditional medicine to treat this, because we've had those stories that are out there.
Yes, but that again falls within the domain of the mythical kingdom. We still don't know. Nothing has been confirmed yet. We are still, even the medical experts are still trialing conventional vaccines. So if those guys are still trialing the vaccines, who are we to say that our herbs can cure this? So my answer to this will be there is no confirmed herb yet that can cure coronavirus.
All right, and this is something that is on our side, on our desk as well. The panic buying, is there a way we are perhaps countering this? Because someone asks here, and you can respond to any one of us, and this is Kene. He asks, are we at risk because the things we are buying from the shops, this is page 2, may have come in contact with a person with the disease? So how do we treat this panic buying, first of all, from our editorial perspective, and discouraging it or perhaps giving information on it?
I think 2 ways. The first is to go by the official position of the government that there is no need for us to do this. The government has said that everything is under control as far as the production of goods is concerned and the availability of those goods. If there were to be a lockdown, I don't think the supermarkets and the pharmacies will be shut down.
Do we cause it to be repeated when we show it happening elsewhere?
Yes, that happens. It's human nature. If people panic, then they tend to stock up. They are trying to protect themselves. They believe they are going to die of hunger. I've seen somebody here who's saying, what are we to do if we just, quarantine ourselves in our house without food?
And why the tissue paper? Not just Kenya, but worldwide.
Yes. There has also been that issue of tissue paper. Some psychologists tried to explain it. They say, I don't know, people just fear the flu and all this. They know. I've had arguments that some people experience mild diarrhea, and so they are stocking up on this.
That's a very small number.
But that doesn't warrant.
However, it's not a Kenyan phenomenon. It's a global phenomenon. Everywhere I've seen people carrying off truckloads of tissue paper from, and even fighting, and even fighting for it. So
perhaps this shows we need to engage some professionals like anthropologists or social scientists to really understand some of these behaviors.
I've actually assigned somebody to look into that, the psychology of the toilet paper, the tissue paper. Why is it?
Because it's global.
But we need, as you're saying, we need somebody who understands human behavior to study this. It's quite interesting. When I first saw it, I thought it was a Kenyan affair. Why is it that we are so interested in tissue paper? I went to supermarkets and people had trolleyfuls of tissue paper and wipes and all this.
Yes.
So maybe.
And to answer the question, if we are at risk going to buy stuff because people come into contact with
Yes.
them.
Now that is a problem with panic. I'm just picking up from here that if you all panic and rush to the same supermarket, you're already crowding. So that's a risk. As to whether these items that you are touching are at risk, it really highlights the need for everybody washing their hands, because if you go in there and you have virus on your hands and you touch something and somebody else comes to touch it, then there's a risk. But if everybody's washing their hands or either sanitizing, but especially with soap and water, then whoever touches whatever they touch, it doesn't put anyone at risk. If they're talking about wherever they came from, usually the virus will not last very long in these items. My colleague has said 2 hours to 2 days, which must be very new information. But I would say whatever you touch, assume that it's contaminated if somebody else has touched it, so that you can clean your hands soon after.
I think the biggest risks in the retail shops and supermarkets is the fact that we are all crowded there.
Yes.
At the till, we are all lining up there, bumper to bumper.
Yeah.
There is no space. You're walking down the supermarket aisles, and there are tons and tons of people. So there is actually not this social distancing thing that we are talking about.
Yes.
And I've seen in other jurisdictions where people, especially at the tills, where they are telling you have to maintain distance. Whether it's a meter, they maintain distance. But here, that is not happening. Also, I think, and maybe this will be creating panic, but maybe we need to do it, is ensuring that people do not just flock the supermarkets.
Yes.
So you have a tiny supermarket with 500 people inside it. I've seen it, I've been in a
It's a risk
supermarket,
in and of
and
itself.
I felt really uncomfortable.
For you and Mark, what you probably can educate people, if you have to self-isolate, what items do you need for those 14 days? What items do you need to buy that will keep you so you don't have to keep panic buying and buying unnecessary items such as tissue paper? So maybe our conversation should dwell on that,
Yes.
Enough things to at least last those 14 days. Also.
The essentials that you should have.
The essentials that you
Even
should
though
have.
people have different consumption needs and patterns.
Yes.
Depending on
I
their
tell
class.
you, you're telling me I need 4 kgs of unga. I consume 4
At
kgs
least the
of
essentials. That'd be a good starting point, and people can build
That's a
from
good
there.
story. That's a good story
Yeah, it's a
angle.
good story.
And just
Yeah,
before,
it's a good story.
because I'm out of time, how valid is it? Someone asks that of the survivor's blood can be used to boost the immune system of those still affected or those yet to be infected. This is page 2 here. How valid is that, Dr. Mureithi, that the virus of a survivor's blood can be used?
Okay, that's loosely termed, but there's a bit of deep immunology there. From the blood, there's something we look out for, that's the antibody. And you remember my previous comment when I was talking about if there's immunity that is enough to protect. So in fact, right now, I saw even from the NIH website, that's the National Institute of Health, that is asking for everyone who has recovered in the United States to turn up for this clinical trial, where they're trying to see what elements in the immune system have persisted that can be used maybe for therapy in the future. So really here, the person who's asking is really asking some very deep immunology, but it's not really the blood, but it's the components of the immune system that are protective. That's what probably they're looking out for, and from there, those components will educate in us finding a therapy or even a vaccine that could be effective. So it's important to study these people who are recovering, get their blood, but from their blood, get some elements of the immune system, such as the antibodies, which will help us answer that. So they are quite right to ask that.
Okay.
But, yeah.
All right. I was floating.
That's really good science.
Dr. Masika, between coronavirus and Spanish flu of 1918, which one was worse? And this speaks to the issue that you spoke about earlier.
Yes.
Guys, let's not panic.
Yes. I still maintain, and as you can see, we were so scared of China back then. You can see what happened later and where the infections came from. Spanish flu was bad news. It killed more people than World War I. The estimates are between 25 million and 50 million people. And it actually went beyond one flu season. The fact that because it was still circulating in the population, it got a rebound. But we are much wiser now. Back then, we couldn't even visualize a virus. Viruses started being visualized, I think, in the 1930s or 40s. That's when we were able to say, actually, what causes flu is this virus. Before then, we just knew this is an infection, maybe caused by this, but we couldn't identify it. So the Spanish flu was bad news, and that's because it had undergone what we call a shift. Flu usually mutates every year, and that's why you keep changing the vaccine. But once in a while, it combines maybe flu from different species. Maybe swine or pig and bird flu or pig and human flu can combine and form a new pathogen or a new virus that is totally new, that nobody is immune to it. And when nobody is immune to that virus, it spreads much faster because no one has immunity to prevent it. So Spanish flu was much worse, killing up to 50 million people, at least 25 million, which was much more than World War I. So far, COVID-19 has killed, maybe by the end of the day, it will be 10,000. Or the end of the day tomorrow, it has infected about 250,000.
Yes.
So the numbers you can see are much lower. This is not to trivialize COVID-19 because those are actually many deaths. But if you compare to the Spanish flu, it means we've had bad bugs before, much worse than what we have, and we've risen above them. The question is, have we learned something from it so that we don't end up where we were at that point? And I can say we have. The question is how much we can apply that now so that we reduce the number of deaths.
And there's some good news to report that no local case or at least a new infection in Wuhan that was a source of this, and perhaps something that we can learn from Wuhan, Italy, and the others moving forward in reporting it and even in treating it.
Yes,
Your last comment.
I saw that today they have not reported any case, but again, it doesn't mean now they can go back life. It's normal now, they can go celebrate. They have another 14 days. That in those 14 days, they should not also report any other new case. And with that, they can now start loosening those lockdown measures that they have installed. So that's really good news, but they're not out of the woods yet per se. They still have another duration of time that now they can declare, and it gives us hope that if they I think they got hit the worst.
Yes.
And I'm sure if they've gotten to this point, then all of us should be encouraged.
Yes.
Again, there's this thing they're calling a second wave. So really, even after those 14 days and there are no reported cases, I think from now on we really need to change, or they need to change their habits, their social behavioral habits, their social distancing, washing of hands. That should not stop, because again, there's that fear this thing can reoccur again. So again, end of the day, we'll sit back and reassess human behavior, the way we shake hands, the way we interact, probably will change. We don't know.
No, it has changed a lot in our day-to-day interactions. And on that note, there's so much more to discuss and so many other questions to respond to. But you have their handles, and they will be responding to some of the questions because they were tagged in them as well. And they will be responding to them directly. You can just follow them. I tweeted it earlier with their handles just to ask them direct questions, and even Mwinzi on challenging him as the head of the health desk here at the Nation Media Group. So thank you, Dr. Masika, Dr. Mreithi, and almost said Dr. Mwinzi. But you're
why didn't you?
You're getting there. Thank you for your time.
Is that?
And yes, this is perhaps how it would play out if I attempted to work from home. I'll leave you with that video. Thank you for watching Press Pass.
All the time, the question is how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider?
All the time, the question is how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me. My apologies.
What's this going to mean for the region?
My apologies. South Korea's policy choices on North Korea have been severely limited in the last 6 months to a year because North.
I help women find independence by training them in fish farming. It's tough on my back, joints, and can cause headaches. Panadol Extra relieves multiple types of pain. If symptoms persist, seek medical advice.
This week on The Trend, Nadia will be here with sassy music. All these and many more only on The Trend.
NTV, turning on your world. The following program has been rated GE. It is therefore suitable for general family viewing.
This is Fact Finder from the BBC.
Coming up on today's show. Death threats and distress. Nigerian man whose photo was used in a fake post claiming that he had contracted coronavirus speaks out.
Sometimes when I'm moving around, I shed tears. Even that night, I was shedding tears to my wife. I was like, don't worry, calm down. I believe that God will see you through.
Was this Tanzanian superstar almost stabbed at a concert? We tell you if this is fake or fact.
Did Venezuelan president urge women to have 6 children?
False.
False. We'll find out in true or false.
Hello, I'm Shiro Morioki.
And I'm Richard Kagone. Welcome to Fact Finder from the BBC, in which we question the reality behind the headlines and look at the stories being talked about across Africa and how they affect you. Now, the World Health Organization has declared the coronavirus outbreak a pandemic due to the alarming levels of spread globally. There are now more than 100 cases recorded in Africa. That's according to the latest data from the UN Health Agency.
Now, we continue our coverage of COVID-19 as it's now known, and we begin in Nigeria, where the rates contain the outbreak